Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in to Dreams Fulfilled today. Today we have an amazing guest, Elizabeth Larson, here to join us. Hey Elizabeth, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. It's Friday on the day we're recording, so that's nice. Have you had a good week so far?
I have. It's been busy,
Yeah.
but all good busy. So
That's awesome. Well, I would love for you just to introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners so they know who they're hearing from today.
sure. My name is Elizabeth Larson, and I'm from Southeast Michigan, and I'm a financial advisor who specializes in special needs planning.
That's amazing. Well, that really segues into our first question. So we just like to ask all of our guests on the show, because most of the individuals that we are, interviewing and talking to are involved in the disability community in one way, shape, or form, whether they're a parent or they work in the community. So I'd love to hear for you, what has your journey been like to being involved within the disability community?
Yeah. So when I was 10 years old, my parents adopted a little girl named Janie, and she has Down syndrome. And Janie is she's my kindred spirit. She's just my favorite person. So she was my first introduction to the special needs community.
Okay.
And then a few years later, my parents adopted my sister, Sammy, who has Down syndrome. And then a few years after that, Agnes, who has Down syndrome. And then a few years after that, Rosie, who has Down syndrome. So I have 4 little sisters with Down syndrome. So it's been a part of my life since I was 10 years old. And then really early on, I got involved in the buddy program at my elementary school. So I was buddies to a little girl who had Down syndrome there. And then as I got older, I started volunteering with the Special Olympics. And then now I was just accepted to the board of Gigi's Playhouse Detroit. So it's been forever. I've been involved for a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's in your family, right? It's your
Yeah.
sisters. It's like your people, the people you love, people you're closest to.
Yeah.
And I think proximity, right, breeds understanding and compassion, but also you just, especially when it's in your family and the people that you love, it changes your whole perspective on life, on so many different things.
Oh yeah.
So with your sisters, right, I'm assuming you go away, you go to college. When you were going to school, were you like, I want to work to support people with disabilities, or did you not really have a specific targeted, this is what I'm going to do with my life necessarily?
Yeah, actually, I mean, when I was in school, I didn't really even know what I wanted to do with my life.
Okay.
No, I mean, it was still incredibly important to me, and I was always advocating for more inclusivity and things like that. But it was more of on a personal basis. It was not. I was going to school for accounting.
Okay.
It was kind of dry, but
Yeah, but accounting is necessary and needed. And so, when you got your first job, were you a financial planner? Is that how you started?
No, actually, so when I got out of college, I went into a completely other field, and I was in truss manufacturing, which is like the roofs of houses. So I mean, totally different. But my dad is a financial advisor and has been my whole life. And for years, I was bugging him to come work with him, and then finally, I wore him down.
Really wore him down. So now you're a financial planner.
Yes.
And you specialize in working with individuals with disabilities and helping with special needs planning. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Yeah. I had a conversation when I first started. I didn't really know, like I knew that I wanted to do financial advising, but I didn't really know, I didn't know if there was going to be some sort of a niche or whatever. And then I had a conversation with a friend about, she has a son who has disabilities, and she was talking about how they had life insurance for him. And I was like, oh, that triggered something in my mind. I was like, okay, I think that there needs to be more than just life insurance. Like, it goes beyond that. So then I started digging in a little bit more so that I could try to help her, because he's going to need those government benefits that you hear a lot about. And so that's kind of where I was like, oh, this is fascinating to me. This is interesting. This is where I want to help people, because this is what I've always been passionate about. And then it just kind of took off from there.
That's amazing. And I think right when you work out of your heart and your passion, it changes everything. So that's incredible. So with special needs financial planning, the work that you do, how would you say you're working to engage families with disabilities, people with disabilities, and helping them to navigate society, right? And navigate so many overwhelming complexities with money and the future. What does that look like for you?
So, I mean, when I first start off, because I do planning for families and then also for individuals with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my first meeting, it starts at a way more deep, less financial spot. So, what I do is I really dig deep into what's important to the family or to that person. And we really explore what their most deeply held values are. And then we can align their overarching financial strategy with their special needs plan. And depending on the age of the person with a disability, even if it's like parents planning for their child, I like to have that person in the meeting as well, because we are planning for their future, right? So I want to know what's important to them, what they want for their future, because it's their future. And I think that's like a really small step that I can take into a more inclusive society, because often, and I see this, I mean, it's everywhere. Often these people, their lives are dictated to them. And I believe that they deserve to have every independence and make every decision that they can, because it, like I said before, like it's their future. So they should get a say, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, for so long and being a special education background, right? The student isn't necessarily legally obligated to be invited to the meeting until they're 14. And even then, when they're invited, they may or may not come. And so there's almost this, it is a pattern, right? Where their whole lives, these groups of people are meeting and talking and planning about them. But that's always been a big thing for me. And when I taught, it was like, they need to be in the room because it is their life, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I want to take it in when you think about inclusion, right? No one would plan for my life if I wasn't in the room.
Right.
So why should it be any different? I think, voice, choice, autonomy, like, is super crucial. And so I absolutely love that is a model of your planning, because that, you're right. What do they love? What do they want for their future? That absolutely needs to be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say with special needs financial planning, if we have listeners, from all over the country, if they are looking for a financial planner, but they don't necessarily know, okay, is this person reputable? Can I trust them? Are they a special needs planner? Is there a way to kind of like navigate that, to figure out and find someone quality? Are there, certifications and things that will set people apart?
Yeah, there are certifications. So there's the CHSNC, which is the Chartered Special Needs Consultant, which I don't have yet, but I'm going to be getting it. And then there are websites. So there's one is it's specialneedsanswers.com, and that you can find attorneys and financial advisors in your state that specialize in the special needs planning. Plus, it's just a wonderful resource for families. There's the Special Needs Alliance, which I think is mostly attorneys. So that might not be a great one if you're looking for a financial advisor. But you definitely want to make sure that these people want to make sure that they're working with somebody who does know what they're doing and has good resources in this community, because there's a lot of nuances that not everybody knows about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can only, I bet. So where do you see your role in being a special needs financial planner and helping to change maybe society's relationships with individuals with disabilities? How do you help what with your model of inclusion, the way you plan, what do you hope changes just beyond those meetings for that adult into their future?
I mean, I think that it all starts with, having them in the meeting. And then we do something called a Memorandum of Intent, which I'm guessing you've probably heard of that before, where we really list out, and this is where that individual is also really involved, because it really lists out the hobbies they like, the things they want to do. And I hate to tailor this all to, because I'm so used to, with my sisters, the intellectual disability community, because that's not everybody. Yeah. So this isn't important for, I guess, it's so hard because this community is so diverse in itself.
Absolutely. Because everyone is so unique, right? And so I think a big way that that it sounds like to me that you're already doing it is that you're uniquely meeting them where they are, right?
Yeah.
For what needs they have. And do they a lot of times have questions for you about what their future finances are going to look like? Like, what does that look like on their end?
So, I mean, again, it depends. So, I've worked with a young man who has muscular dystrophy. He's going to be able to make a lot of money. He's a very, very bright guy, but he needs to have Medicaid in order to be able to pay for his medical expenses. And so we've had to work together on that, which, we've figured that figured that out. But and then there's also individuals who have intellectual disabilities where that's more like, I want to live in an apartment. I want to live on my own. I want to have a job. And that's more of a, where like you would come in, and I would work with you to say, okay, here are the steps we need to take to get you into your own apartment. Or I would work with the Easter Seals to say, okay, let's do this job training so we can get you into this job. Yeah. So I rely a lot on building a team with me. I can't do it all on my own. I need to be able to have people like you and other organizations that can come in and we can say, hey, this is how we can benefit this person and give them the life that they want to live.
Yeah, 100%. And we say this at Able, like we have to be bridge builders because with this community, like you said, people are diverse. Everyone is diverse, whether you are neurotypical or you're neurodiverse, or you have an intellectual disability or a physical disability, right? People are diverse. And so all of our needs are going to be so different. And I think having people who, whether like we do transition planning and building out those person-centered plans, or you are doing the financial piece, right? You're treating every individual uniquely and making sure they have every resource that they could possibly need to build success. Because, you hear all the time, like it takes a village to raise a kid, but I'm like, it takes a village to like keep living.
Yeah.
Right? And to like have success into your adulthood too. That's for everybody.
For everybody. Yeah.
So I think that's incredible. From your perspective, what are obstacles you see when you're working with families? What are the biggest obstacles and barriers that you're kind of aware of right now?
So I think that the biggest barrier is families being so overwhelmed that they don't even start. So, I mean, a lot of times parents who have children with disabilities, they're wearing a lot of hats. They're wearing like healthcare advocate hats. They're wearing education advocate hats. And somebody I spoke to recently, she was like, I can barely plan for the next 5 minutes, let alone years down the road. And so I think it's really important to let people know that there are teams of people out there that can help to take off some of the stress. I don't know if you know this or not, but that's why I started a YouTube channel. I don't know if you know that I have one or not, but I do a YouTube channel and it's all about special needs planning to try to say like, hey, there are things that we can do. There are teams of people that are out there that want to help you carry the load. And I'm sure that this podcast does a lot of the same for your listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting that you say that because that is like 100% the barriers that we see. And I think taking that first step is really overwhelming because families, right, and individuals already have so much of a load on themselves too. It's like, how can I add one more thing when we're just trying to figure out like what tomorrow is going to look like?
Yep.
But realizing that there are specialists who care first off, right? And I think the biggest thing, and I hear it in like the language that you speak, is that when we are working with clients at Able, and I'm 100% sure when you're working with your clients that like, it's a relationship first, right? It's like, I want to care for you and walk with you and help you and support you. Like that's like, it's a relationship. And so if you come at it from that angle of like, I know that you're in a really hard spot. But it's helping them to see the incredible importance of planning. Because at the end of the day, it's going to make sure that the future is brighter, is better. And that overall, as kind of as you're working with families, that the future really is going to ensure success, at least on the transition. And I'd be interested in hearing the financial planning kind of lens, but there's a lot of research growing within transition. It's a very new thing, new concept, I guess, if you will. But there's a lot of body of research showing that the earlier you start to think about transition and plan for it, like that the adult will have so much of a better life outcome, like that they'll have a higher paying job, right? That they'll access all their benefits, they'll have a better social network, they'll have more self-determination, more self-advocacy skills. Is that what kind of you see kind of similarly within the financial world?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the earlier the planning starts, the better. But I also say that yes, I think it's an old Chinese proverb. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. What's the second best today? So I don't want people to feel discouraged that they've waited too long. And so what's the point now? Yes, it can be easier when there's like, from infancy, then the planning can be like, it feels like smaller steps.
Yeah.
When later on, there are steps that we can take. They're just a little bit broader.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know how to explain it a little bit better than that, because I don't want people to feel discouraged.
Yeah, totally. And like, helping people to see that today is the best day to start, right? Yep. And that if you don't feel like today's the day, that's okay.
Yep.
Life happens. And I mean, especially this last year, I've seen that life happens.
Yep. And sometimes you can't plan for everything.
Absolutely not. No, I didn't think a year ago we'd be in a pandemic, but here we are.
Yep.
We change and we adapt and we figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you really care about inclusion. I think that that's something that's very important to changing society, to changing education, to changing the workforce, right?
Mm-hmm.
To ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table. And you come at it from a lens of like, these are your sisters and your family members. So for you, what does inclusion really mean? Like when you hear the word inclusion, what does that mean to you?
So it means really like hearing what this community has to say and really actually listening to it and taking it to heart. Not putting them in a bubble and leaving them there, which I think is so often what happens, which is really unfortunate. I actually love how Gigi's Playhouse, this board that I just was accepted on, they have self-advocates on there, which I think I've never heard of an organization that has self-advocates on the board, that they get to actually have a real say in what goes on in the organization that is for them. Yeah. So it seems so simple, but it's huge. So that's the main thing, is really just like hearing what each individual has to say and taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Like I think that what's great, I mean, when I speak to you, I think about my sister Sammy, who just wants to live in an apartment so bad. But my parents are struggling with the fact that right now it wouldn't be safe for her to live in an apartment by herself. But that you are somebody that can like outline steps and outline an action plan to help that happen. I think that that's true inclusion, when you can say, okay, I'm going to meet you where you're at and we're going to figure it out. This community has had to learn how to play by our rules. They have to learn how we learn. They have to work how we work. And I feel like it's about time for us to make some concessions and change the way that we are doing things to make it easier for them, because they've had it so hard. And it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Amen. Say that louder. Wow. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I feel like the world is built for like this box of a person, right?
Yep.
We get into buildings, right?
Yeah.
The way we walk around, the way we navigate the world, right? Education. And I think I was having a conversation with someone a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about IDEA and ADA, and it just struck me. I was like, it's only been 30 years since ADA was signed. Like 30 years. And there is still so much more we need to make, progress on, to make things universally, like the universal design concept, not just in like how to get into a store, but how to get a job, right? And like ensuring that everyone has access, and that's going to look different based on who you are. So I think that I just like love the way you put that. It was just, we had to start making some concessions, like 100%. With your expertise and thinking about financial planning, how do you feel like financial planning for people with disabilities changes their lives and the life of the community long term? What do you think are the impacts and waves that it has?
So I think that when with proper planning, I think that will allow for more independence for them, allow for them to be able to live the lives that they want to live. They're not going to be stuck with like a small little paycheck from the government and working a job they don't actually enjoy, but it's a job that would take them, so I think that having proper financial planning for individuals with disabilities just really opens up their world to more. I mean, I think that it helps with parents. It helps to alleviate some of the stress that they have, to know that like, okay, what they're doing is correct. It's not all on their shoulders. That's what I really want families to understand. Like, yes, it can be scary and daunting to think about even planning this, starting the planning process, but if they can just push through that, like just making that first meeting, then a lot of the stress is going to be gone. And we're going to be able to take that off of them and carry it alongside. And I don't know, and they'll be able to just really enjoy their lives with their kids.
Yeah. That sounds beautiful. And you carry that load and carrying that burden with them. And I think just the like message of like, you're not alone and I'm here with you. And I may not be able to understand 100% of what you're going through, but I'm sitting with you and walking with you is incredibly powerful. Because, we have so many clients, and I personally have friends who have kids with disabilities, and like there's just like a loneliness, right? That families can feel in isolation, and I think bringing specialists in who have the heart, right, to you're not just another client, but like you're someone I'm walking alongside of. I think that's just really powerful. If you think about, I know this is a really broad question, okay?
Okay.
Sweeping question, so you don't feel like you have to give the perfect answer. But right, our national, America, the United States of America and community of Americans, right? What do you think a shift would look like to make those concessions, right? To include individuals with disabilities and their families? Like, what do you think are some small shifts we can make as a society so that there is that inclusion and there is that understanding?
Yeah. So you're right. This is a very broad question. It can be as simple as like saying hello to somebody who has a disability and not just like feeling uncomfortable and not saying hello, to voting on Board of Education, people that really believe in inclusivity in the schools. But this has been on my mind a lot, even like from earlier in the year with Minneapolis and George Floyd. I think it has a lot to do with our children and what we expose them to. So okay, for example, my daughter has had the privilege of growing up with 4 aunts who have Down syndrome. And then she also, pre-COVID times, was volunteering with me at Gigi's Playhouse. So she's had a lot of exposure. And so my hope for her was that she'll have she'll have more exposure than I ever had, which means that she'll be more inclusive than I ever was. And then her children will have more exposure than even she had. And they'll be even more inclusive. So I know that's a slow process. I want it to be faster than that. But I think that a lot of it is what we can expose the next generations to, because I think that we can build on it and it can get better, hopefully faster than 30 years. But that's kind of where my mind has been lately.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, and just about proximity. And if we are proximate to people and we get to know them and we have a relationship with them, it just changes everything.
Oh yeah.
Like sitting down with someone and having a meal with them changes that. Like it changes things. It really does. There's something about breaking bread with someone that is really powerful.
Yep.
And I think that like the way that we're made is so that it does breed connection. And it does breed, right, hopeful heart change, where people see people with disabilities like as dignified, worthy individuals, right, who deserve to be included in schools, right, who should have high expectations placed on them. There was the triathlete who just finished the Ironman.
Yeah.
Right? he has Down syndrome, and he is the first man, right? And so, like, your daughter seeing that, like other people seeing like, oh, this is possible, and being proximate to people, I think hopefully will slowly over time, definitely.
Yeah, well, I think that it makes it even, my daughter, she has a couple of kids from the CI class. They're mostly in her class and then go to the CI class in, certain parts of the day. Well, this year is weird because it's only half day school, but but it's not even so much that I don't think that she even so much sees it as like, oh, this is a possibility for the disability community. I think that she just thinks like it's just normal.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be. That's where we need to get as a society.
Yeah.
I was reading, I think it was a while ago, but I was reading an article about how there was a community of people who banded together to learn sign language because their 2-year-old neighbor was deaf and they wanted her to be able to communicate with them. Oh, it gives me the shivers just thinking about it. Like, that's what we need. We need people that will that they'll say, I'm gonna, like I said before, I'm gonna make these concessions. I'm gonna do the hard work to make this person's life just a little bit easier.
Yeah, where it's just like, of course, like there's not an even like, wow, look at that. It's like, yes, like this is the expectation.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. So we like to end our time on an upswing to hear a little bit about your life.
Okay.
And to hear a little bit about hope. So what has brought you joy this week?
That it was 80 degrees in November in Michigan.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
What did you do where it was like everybody outside?
Yeah, I mean, I went for a big walk with my daughter. Other than that, I worked outside. I ended up taking my laptop out to the porch because I was like, I'm not going to waste this day.
Oh yeah, for sure. When normally you're like preparing for snow right now, is that what's normally happening? Snow?
Yes. Yeah. Usually it's already been snowing. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Better you than me.
I'm sure we'll pay for it later. It'll probably dump on us really soon. But
what's something that has made you laugh this week?
Yeah, so we had our first in-session program at Gigi's Playhouse last weekend. So we were all playing a game, and it was just a ton of fun. So I laughed a lot.
How long have you been involved with Gigi's where you're at?
A little over a year, 2 years. I can't remember.
No worries. That's awesome.
My first event with them was an Over the Edge challenge where I climbed down a 26-story building. So that was cool.
That's so awesome. I'm involved. I volunteer with our Gigi's, and I have a lot of clients that go to Gigi's, but they just did an Over the Edge for Gigi's in Raleigh. So that's so cool that they do it there too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What has been a song lately that you can't get out of your head?
Well, when you ask that question, I just start to sing I Can't Get You Out of My Head by Kylie Minogue.
That's so fun. A lot of times I've been asking parents this lately, and it's been like, like the songs their kids are listening to, and they're like, I don't really want to admit this, but like this is really the song stuck in my head because I'm hearing it like all the time in the background.
Well, if we're talking that, which is true, my daughter won't stop listening to Fantasy by Mariah Carey, and I'm not stopping her. I love it.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh, that's great. I mean, most of the time it's like
Frozen.
Frozen, or like a theme song to some show, like Daniel Tiger's theme song. So Mariah Carey,
I'll take it.
That's great. What's been a meal that you've been like eating a lot lately during this pandemic time?
Yeah, tacos. A lot of tacos.
Ooh, are you hard or soft shell?
Soft shell.
Me too. Nice soft, warm corn tortilla. It's like, it's the jam. What's your like favorite in filling for your taco?
Honestly, I like it to be really simple. It's like chicken with cilantro and onions, and like a little bit of hot salsa.
That's like the classic street taco for sure.
Yes.
What's been a show that you've like maybe been binge watching lately or can't get enough of?
Hopefully this is okay for me to say, but a lot of Schitt's Creek lately.
Oh my gosh.
I love Schitt's Creek.
It's spelled, for everyone listening, SCHI. Yeah. Oh, I love Schitt's Creek. Moira is like my favorite.
Yep.
And it was so funny because I listened to an interview with Annie Murphy, who plays Alexis, the other day. And she was like talking about Catherine O'Hara's character, Moira. if you've not seen it, you just please go watch the trailer. It's an incredible show. It's so good. But she was like, I was so fascinated. One day they were like working, and she was like, Catherine managed to make the word how into a 3-syllable word, where she's like, how? And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is so funny. But as I've watched the show after listening to the interview, I'm like, oh my gosh, Catherine O'Hara is like ridiculously talented.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like ridiculously talented.
Yes.
That's so fun. I love that you love it. Did you watch the Emmys then, or hear about all the Emmys they won?
So I heard about all the Emmys they won, but I didn't watch it. Just recently though, they had on Netflix, there's like a documentary about the production of the show, or like the last day of the show, and I just bawled my eyes out the whole time.
Oh,
like, I want it to be done.
I know.
So good.
I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people in the States, like, we just found out about it, so everyone's like binging it, and they're like, Canada's like, bye.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yep.
Yeah. So we always like to end the show just talking about hope. We think that hope is really powerful and really important for everyone. So how can you hold out hope to our listeners today?
Yeah, that you're not in this alone, and that there are teams of people out there like you, like me, like many, many others that want to help carry the load. And that when you're planning for your child's future, you're also planning to live a great life with them today. It's not just for after you pass away. You can live a great life now. All you have to do is just start planning.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I love that. Living the life that you want now. That's so wonderful. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. It was nice being here. Thanks for having me.